It's official. Japan just flipped the switch today. Just like what SBI Chairman Kyoto said last year, all banks in Japan will be using XRP starting 2025. Go Japan. You want proof? Here it is. SBI Holdings, Japan, January 31st, 2025. I want to read it to you guys. Since then, we have been actively incorporating the latest financial technology such as Ripple's distributed ledger technology in the US to develop secure, inexpensive, and fast overseas remittance. Start providing service from today. So now that this is starting, this is a tremendous step forward for XRP. Because if they do well and succeed, the rest of the world is going to take heed and they're going to notice. The whole world tends to look towards Japan. My buddy worked for a company that dealt with Japanese companies, and he said that they always had the highest standards, and because of that, they were the toughest to deal with. Banks around the world know this, and they're going to pay attention. So this is the perfect opportunity for XRP to show the whole world what it's got. And if they're successful, which we know they're going to be, it will be like a domino effect of the rest of the world flooding in. And guys, quit worrying about the ups and downs right now. If you can't handle a 5, 10, 40% drop, you might have trouble going forward from here. We have utility starting as of today, and here's your proof. Now, we're not going to see their money tonight, okay? It's a process. Let it cook. XRP to the moon.
Hello, everyone. Massive update when it comes to the whole thing of Quant, Ripple XRP, Stellar XLM, and even some Zenfin XDC. Chosen, yes, you heard that right, an update by China, the United States, and even Japan. Now, I'll state this. A lot of us already know about the whole thing of Ripple and Japan, but this is an update. So smash that like if you haven't done so already. Consider sticking to the end of this outline. And how about this? The Decent wallet, you can get a discount, helps the channel. Let's jump into that. We'll come right back.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. So just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.
When we get into the whole thing of ISO 222, I want you guys to understand that the coexistence period for MT messaging for Swift ends in November, right? 2025. All roads lead to November. Now, with that said, we have MT messaging. So that's supposed to end. Enter into a whole new thing with ISO 222, but is it MT? It's called MX. It's called MX. So I'm going to full screen this, and I want to share this with you in regards to MX, as in the whole thing with ISO 222. These message standards refer to a global financial messaging standard that utilizes XML-based format, denoted as MX, to transmit richer, more structured data between financial institutions, enabling improved automation, transparency, and of course efficiency in transactions, compared to the older, as we know, MT message formats. So the bottom line is this, okay? And that is understanding that we got this thing going on when it comes to, well, MT was the old system. It was truncated messages. If you ever used a log file, you know, you guys know me, like I'm into gaming and stuff like that. If you get too big of a log file, you get message truncation. And if you think about it, you send a cross-border message. Well, if it gets lost in translation, time is money. This is supposed to fix that solution, right? So getting further into this, I want to just kind of put a little emphasis on the whole idea of it's not MT. When you think of MX, you should immediately associate ISO 222. If we jump over to Oracle, which is really big in the news lately, but talks about 8 processing of MX messages as per ISO 222. Now it says ISO 222, as we know, is a multi-part international standard prepared by ISO Technical Committee TC68 Financial Services. But we also know, when it comes to this, TC68 has a liaison. Who's the liaison? And of course, that's ISO TC307. Under ISO 222, financial institutions will be changing the messages they send and receive via SWIFT from the legacy MT message type format to the new MX message type format. More transparent, holds more data, etc., etc. Interoperability between banks. Now, before we jump further into this, again, I just kind of want to get Shane's own little 2 cents here to get into, as I would say, more of this nitty gritty. How do you say quant without saying quant? Again, liaison. TC68 liaison is 307, and that, of course, is the quant network standard. And to see that from Oracle, with all the news from Oracle, again, your thoughts before we get further into this, sir?
Well, as we already know, who is helping Oracle with this underlying tech infrastructure? Quant Network, who is also the convener and co-chief of, let's just say, ISO TC 307. It was birthed from him, which ties directly into TC 68, which ties directly into ISO 222, because it's under financial services, and a part of distributed ledger is what? Financial services, amongst lots of other things. That coexisting period shift, that mandatory shift in November, I think is going to be major. Kind of funny that they did X, because you have like the X's, like your XLM, your XRP, your Quant X, like we just went over in the other video, Constellation DAG. And what a lot of people don't realize is what that does is it gives the banks data that they normally wouldn't see. It gives the banks the data to see, where we're purchasing things or how we're doing certain things, and kind of sort of like what Facebook does when we search. Well, it's going to give the banks that same opportunity when we're purchasing to see a lot more data so that they can do whatever they're going to do on the back end with that data, whether it's shared amongst other financial institutions, whether it's sell it to someone, who knows what's going to happen once they actually get a hold of this enriched data. But that's really what it's about. It's like they say that data is the new oil, and exactly what it is. Knowing how I can specifically pinpoint this customer and its needs, and then give it exactly what it's looking for via the data that is being collected when we're doing certain things. So it's kind of crazy, but yeah, November is that date, November 2025, and we sit just literally 10 months away from that as we speak. So yeah, there may be that of utility that we need to get the ball rolling down the hill.
Well, speaking of that ball being rolled down the hill, let's give you guys some updates from the Swift site. Let's face it, in my opinion, other people's opinions, like, will Chainlink save Swift? Because, people point out that, well, Ripple is going to be a competitor. Well, what about maybe possibly working with the competitors? It's a lot to take in, to say the least. But wherever the case be, I want to pull up this next screen. It is from Swift, and it's an update if you're not aware of it. So as I pull this up, this is straight from Swift.com. Standard Chartered adoption of ISO 222 will result in a seamless payment experience for customers both into and out of Asia. For Standard Chartered, challenges when it comes to payments can be viewed through 2 lenses, global and regional. Global challenges are driven by the inadequacy of current formats that banks and market clearing infrastructures use to exchange payment data. Now, again, I want you guys to put a focus on Standard Chartered. They're huge, but how huge, and who is some of their institutional customers? Now, here's something that was kind of interesting. When I got further into this article about what Swift is mentioning specifically with Standard Chartered, I came to this conclusion of, well, why all of a sudden is there a 4.4 error? Now, I said to myself, page not found, but I said to myself, too much mention recently about Standard Chartered. Now, let me share with you why this is important. So, I went to the Wayback Time Machine, and you guys know me, I do this stuff every once in a while. This was pulled actually from February 27th, 2022. Why am I bringing this to you? Well, when we get into this, it mentions a lot about Swift, Asia, Standard Chartered, and it mentions specifically about seamless payment experience for customers both into and out of Asia. Talks about the cost benefits. Again, it gets into the weeds of some of this, which is, let's face it, kind of cool to say the least. But whatever the case be, it mentions specifically how this has to be like, fast moving and so on, right? And this was originally posted in October of 2020. Now, again, I want you guys to understand when Standard Chartered mentions key announcements about, cash products and how they're heavily involved in the flows from the world coming into Asia and intra-Asia regional flows, understand the markets and where it starts with ISO 222 adoption, okay? Talk about new standard and seamless and rich experience for its clients. All right, so again, rich data, again, harnessing some of this data, and this statement here, it's clear that there is great promise and we plan to harness a great deal of returns from the significant investment in ISO 222. This is from Standard Chartered stating this, okay? So there is that. But as we get further into it, I want you guys to understand this. This brings you to the next link that doesn't exist, at least from there. Because when I got further into it, brings us back to Swift. And on Swift, it mentions specifically the new standard allows merchants to set up direct debit authorization and initiate the collection instruction to bank on behalf of their consumers. The initiative by Swift and HSBC, don't forget this part, aims to avoid fragmentation. So keyword to remember here is fragmentation, and HSBC talks about the common use cases. And again, this pops up. API integration, efforts, incremental investments for industry participants and ensure interoperability with the Hong Kong faster payment system. Now, in the past, I covered this whole thing. I'll come back into the frame of Quant and this thing that's referred to as FastNet Network Limited. We never had any updates. Everything was pending in that regard. And to pound it home, I want to share a little bit more. So there's Hong Kong faster payment systems, and there's the whole thing of specifically the underlying clearing and settlement system by reusing ISO 222 as a standard. Now we know what TC307 is, that orchestration layer. But it says ISO 222 is already widely adopted by market infrastructures across the world. Think of all of them, the infrastructures, whether it's your Ripple XRP with your interledger, or as Quant with the overledger, or some of these other ones like IBM Fedwire with what? Stronghold and Stellar. But the point is, HK, as in Hong Kong, faster payment system, set to become the new standard for cross-border payments for years to come. Now, again, don't forget the terminology. Why? If you're brand new to the channel, here's why. So again, shout out to Quant Papa for originally getting this. So you see this whole thing about FastNet Limited or FastNet Network Limited. No updates. And we said that we would revisit this at some point. And remember how it said back then that it was July 17th, 2020? Status is pending, right? Again, status is pending. Don't forget that. Because when we jump further into this, I want to share some key things with you that really are going to, in my opinion, at least blow your mind. Because when I got further into it myself, I said to myself, interesting again to see some of the terminology, even from our searches, about a thing called Open API. Because when we get, again, further into this, back to the Swift page, where it talks about capital markets and standards, Lisa O'Connor says in recent years, the financial industry moved from safe payments to fast payments. It's now embracing richer data payments as the world is moving faster or towards open banking. But it's necessary because you have that standards. It's a necessity to ensure interoperability between systems and reap the full benefits of open APIs. All right. So again, remember this term as well, open APIs. All right. Here's why. You go to quant.network. There's only 2 searches in regards to open API. And it says introducing overledger 2.1.1 and of course mid-year technology update. Now as I take it further to here, they talk about this support of Ethereum London hard fork, and I won't get into the nerdy weeds of that, but the key thing is to enhance Open API 3.0 compliance. Is that exclusive to Quant? Well, check this out. When we get further into this, it mentions this as well about how there's application for enterprise customers. Again, enterprise institutions, but says that they have this single sign-on Open API 3 API standard for improved developer workflow. okay? More adherent to industry standards. Now, again, try to remember some of this stuff, because back to China. Open API 3 China refers to the adoption and use of the Open API 3 specification for defining and documenting APIs within the Chinese market. Now, a lot of emphasis lately about Open AI, right? We talked about that with Oracle. And when, Channing and I did a video about that not that long ago. I think it was the last one we did together. But talks about how companies are increasingly utilizing the standard to expose their services and facilitate integration with other applications through access to certain open API services like ChatGPT. And again, think about it, Oracle and Project Stargate 2025. So there's these key points from China. You have mobile and so on. And again, back to this part from telecom industry adoption, open APIs through GSMA Open Gateway. Well, what gateway? Now this gets good. And I'll kick over to Channing here in a bit. From straightresearch.com, China Open API market drivers talks about, according to data released by insiderintelligence.com, the e-commerce industry has experienced exponential development over the past few years and decades. Back in 2022, there was a thing called global e-commerce market, and was anticipated to tally, and you saw that right, 5.7 trillion. So China, with them being part of the mix, that's $5.7 trillion. That sounds major, right? Well, I'd be with you. But again, we have to mention some other key things, and that, of course, is Ripple XRP. Because when it comes to Ripple XRP, we see here that they are part of a big mix, and there's, of course, the whole thing of HSBC and METACO. Now, before I mentioned the whole thing of like Quant and HSBC, but again, this will allow banks to be able to sign the whole thing of adopting a ledger protocol and XRP token. Now, again, before I kick it to Channing, I want you guys to see this for yourself. There's this. Back to the whole thing of FastNet. This is a patent called CN111433803A. And it says inventor, and by the way, when we interpret that, that's Quant Network. It says current signee FastNet Network Ltd. Now, before, you guys, I showed you this before, it was pending. And now, look what it says, and this flew on the radar because I wasn't checking it every day. They had an update, and the application was granted in September. This was granted. So this is a true update, and now it's active. And look at this. 11/28/2038 anticipation expiration. Okay, so that's China. Now this gets better. Like the saying goes, wait, there's more. If you dig deeper into this whole patent, does it show the overledger? Yes, it shows the overledger, and I'll zoom in a little bit more just in case you can't see it. Yes, that's straight from the same patent. Okay, that's a screenshot. Now, as we take you further into this, look what it says here. What about the United States, Max? Well, when you click on the interpretation from FastNet, all right, it takes you right to this. And what does it say? Current assignee, Quant Network Limited. Yes, it's linked. Inventor, Gilbert Verdian, Colin Patterson, Paulo Tasca. And look what it says. Application granted. And it says status is active. And look at this. The adjusted expiration is October 2nd, 2040. And again, if that time comes around, they could reapply to extend the time on that. And again, what about Japan? This gets really good. Same thing. Look what it says in regards to Japan. We have application granted, and instead of saying pending like it used to, it says active. Expiration 11/28/2038. Now, if we take the interpretation from here on the inventor, which is written in Japanese characters, and kick it over to here, you see from Japanese to English from Google Translate that literally mentions Quanto Network Limited. There you go. So with that said, so far, before we get further into this whole thing, Channing, this is a big major update in my view, because now the mystery of FastNet Limited, we're starting to get some answers, because now that went from pending to active. To me, that solidifies Quant as being, for one, selected by China, selected by Japan, and selected by the United States of America. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. That's the reason why, going back to when the first Japanese patent was granted, they got America, they got Japan, they got, I believe it was the UK and the UN all in the same day. It's no coincidence you got all those patents in the same day. Now you have the solidification of the one in China and another one in Japan. Like, it's like only showing you that these governmental entities globally are not giving this technology patents if it wasn't something that was going to be used globally. You know, America don't just willingly give out patents. I think that patent, there was like 6 years in the making with that one here in the US, just like a few of the other ones from overseas. And to know that they are going from pending to active to currently being used and currently protected for almost 2 decades, almost literally. It says a lot about the technology. It says a lot about what they know we're shifting into. And the patent here in America specifically says chronologically ordering blockchain. What does that mean? It's giving all blockchain a time zone for it to be able to seamlessly operate and integrate, kind of sort of like what that XM messaging standard is doing for banking. It just all sounds very quant networkish to me, if just in my opinion. And to know that you have all of these people or countries granting these patents, they're not doing it for no reason. Like, and for that patent to literally translate to Gilbert, Verdian, and a few other players from the Quant team, and then Quant Network Limited, like it literally says it on the patent in the translation. That's like a stamp for me, like stamping your passport. Like, there's something that's gonna always be there. So it says a lot. It says a whole lot. And to know that these things are now being granted right along the timeline of this ISO integration, and how TC 307 ties directly into ISO 222. I mean, it's just making a lot of sense. It's looking like their 8 years of work, or almost 9 years of work on ISO TC 307 is finally coming to fruition. So it looks like to me, brother. But I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, it looks like that to me too. I mean, even with the terminology from Japanese to this and so on, and just to give you guys a little reminder of where we're coming from with this, is, basically this right here. So let's jump over to this, because you might have missed it. So on this one, you see, for example, classifications. Again, I'll highlight it right here. So G06, Q30/06, buying, selling, or leasing transactions. Okay, that's with, the whole thing of China. Now, if you jump over the thing, or I should say the patent with the US, you see Quant Network, and what do you see here? Classification, payment architecture, I'll highlight it. Schemes, protocols characterized by the use of specific devices. Now think about those devices, okay? With that said, it also mentions networks using electronic wallets or electronic money safes involving electronic purses, or money safes involving authentication. So for one, when I think of devices, it's like, well, there's so many devices. When I think of networks, it's like, well, think about the regulated liability network. Electronic wallets, think about the new overwallet. Electronic money, think about Quant with when it comes to programmable money. And then look what it says, electronic purses or money safes involving authentication. There's so many things that will be applied here, right? As we get further into this, what about the whole thing again with Japan? Well, again, same thing, okay? So when we talked about the working groups in Japan and how it's a mirror committee of the ones you saw, like for example in US, well, that matches. So that's interesting to see that, and especially since these patents won't expire, at least in Japan and China, till 2038, and in the United States, 2040. I mean, my goodness. I said to myself, I'm going to gather some information, and I realized this from Grok, but this is good stuff. So I'm going to get right to the quick gist of this. How many customers does Standard Chartered have worldwide? Approximately. Okay. So while exact figures are not publicly disclosed, like it mentions here, keep in mind that in the provided search results, we can infer an approximate range. Okay. So Standard Chartered has operations in over 50 countries with a significant presence, again, in Asia. I know there's Africa and Middle East, but again, the focus for this outline is going to be Asia. Target is affluent customers, small and medium enterprises. But here's what's really interesting. Talks about the whole thing of how it's aimed at doubling footprint in wealth. Small, medium enterprises, affluent spaces, plans to target 750,000 wealthy Indian clients alone by the end of 2025. Why would it say by the end of 2025? Now, again, think about it. That mandate, ISO 222 mandate, you have this orchestration layer when it comes to TC 307, the Quant Network Standard. So, again, to me, this is all aging really well. And again, getting further into it, let's put some more emphasis on some of this. Given these points, considering the global reach and focus on various customer segments, conservative estimate might place the customer base in the millions, considering the demographic focus of geographical spread. But again, people feel as though it's speculative, but then we get further into the whole thing about Standard Chartered, several million customers worldwide. But again, I go back to the whole thing of when we talk about institutional clients, some of those are wealthy ones, okay? So jumping into the next part, what about Ripple? Other than Ripple, who else is in the crypto spectrum that's part of Standard Chartered and who they're partnered with and so on? So there's OKX, and they get honorable mention, don't get me wrong, but again, what about this? You guys hold CRO, Crypto.com collaborated to offer global fiat services allowing over 90 countries to deposit and withdraw US dollars, euro, the whole thing of UAE, dirham. Crypto.com's platform, partnership aimed at increasing legitimacy. You get the gist. That's a big deal. Okay, what about Stellar and the whole thing of USDC? Because, let's face it, it was formerly known as Stellar USDC. So that's part of the mix. Interesting to see that. So before we get further into this, I want to get Chang's take, because when it says Crypto.com, this is something I know that you cover, and I know that you love Crypto.com. I do too, and I feel like it's going to be really bullish, to say the least, moving forward. But just your thoughts, just to even see that whole thing mentioned in regards to Crypto.com and Standard Chartered for that partnership.
Yeah. It doesn't shock me. Crypto.com has been solidifying partnerships globally for like the past 4 years, like doing these boss moves, like even the partnership with the AEG group, which gave them the Crypto.com arena, formerly known as Staples Arena. Like AEG group didn't just give them some little company a 20-year contract for no reason. It's because they are solidifying themselves as the first global 3-in-1. The first crypto exchange, the first bank, and the first stock exchange in the world. 3-in-1. And from a tweet that the CEO just put out, call it baiting, or if the tweet is real and what was said in the tweet actually happens, you're going to see the American Stock Exchange being ran possibly on Crypto.com 24/7, and it'll be the first time in history. Larry Fink put out a little something about it, and then the CEO retweeted with the question of, where do you think is going to be ran at? It's like, wow, like that's a lot, but it's because they keep on solidifying these major partnerships globally. We're talking everything from sports teams globally to businesses and governments, because also, along with Hedera and a few other players, Crypto.com is also in the Blockchain Association coming out of Washington, D.C. as well. The CFTC, they're literally putting themselves in the realm of, I'm going to be a force to be reckoned with. I'm going to be one of these staple names when people think of crypto, like what Hedera is doing as well. I'm going to be one of these staple names. I'm going to be the Google, the Web3, the Amazon, because everybody knows there was a lot of .com companies, but a lot of them didn't survive. But the ones that did survive, everybody know their names. And Crypto.com is going to be one of those that everyone knows their name. They were very smart in the branding of buying the domain name Crypto.com and then specifically naming their company that, which when people go to search crypto for the first time, or when they're curious about it, what's going to be one of the first things that pop up in the search engine? Crypto.com. It was brilliant what they did, absolutely brilliant. But it doesn't shock me with Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered also sees what the AEG group saw, which is this company is doing some things that I want to be a part of. Let's see how we can help each other. So there you go, brother. Back to you.
Well, speaking of the next one of these big names, we have to talk a little bit about Stellar. So we talked about Standard Chartered. Let's get into Stellar. How do they come into the mix? Because, you know, it's more to it than just obviously Circle. So I'm going to pull up another thing on your screen that's definitely worth pointing out. So there's this thing, it's called Zodia Custody. And with that said, let's just get into why that's significant. So as you see here, Zodia Custody is UK-based institution, first digital asset custodian, majority owned by Standard Chartered, focused on serving needs of institutions globally. Zodia Custody offers custody, off-exchange settlement, and staking facilitation services, all with the compliance-first approach and bank-grade safety and risk management. Through this partnership, Zodia Custody will now also be able to facilitate, and look what it says here, global, all right, disbursements for its clients through its implementation of Stellar disbursement platform. Now, as I take you to a key thing here, something kind of recent. Well, now that we established the whole thing of Standard Chartered and Stellar, well, somewhat recent. Literally from SC.com. Standard Chartered granted license in Luxembourg to offer digital asset custody services. But boom, boil it, mash it, stick it in stew, London and Hong Kong. So the whole thing of FastNet, well, think about it. Don't overthink about it, right? We're talking about interoperability. All right, a little bit more about this. This time, this comes from Cointelegraph. Standard Chartered debuts crypto services in Europe with new license. Banking giant Standard Chartered is debuting crypto services in Europe via the new Luxembourg entity after securing a digital license under the MiCA framework. Again, pretty recent, but even think about the whole thing of crypto.com. Don't dismiss that. And as we get to this next part, look what it says here in regards to Standard Chartered. Quote, we are incredibly proud to be paving the way for our institutional clients to access the digital asset ecosystem. Standard Chartered has been planning crypto services for years, and people were complaining about, well, it hasn't mooned yet. Yeah, it had to be developed first. It don't work quite that way. You're maybe too used to your meme coins. And if anything, I say that respectfully, but hey, if you make money in meme coins, awesome, good for you. You know, I made him money in that as well, but again, understand that this is a whole other ball game here when we talk about crypto and the whole thing of like what the institutional players are doing. So as of September 2021, Standard Chartered also joined an alliance of fintech companies and banks to accelerate the adoption and best practices. And again, think about this. It's not just crypto.com. They had an alliance with Coinbase, Huobi, Six Digital Exchange, and some of the other biggest crypto leaders and whatnot. All right. Tad bit more about this because now we're going to get into the whole thing of XDC. Recent update, everybody. January 23rd. WuXi XDC wins Liquidity Management Award from who? Standard Chartered. This is why I put so much emphasis on Standard Chartered. This is big because, like it says, this company, WuXi XDC, leading global contract research, development manufacturing organization specializing in antibody drug bioconjugates. I'm not pronouncing it right, I know that. And some of these other things. Been awarded the Treasury Leadership Award for Best Liquidity Management by, of course, Standard Chartered. And that's your XDC plug. So again, think about all this technology and how it all comes together, to say the least. Because again, when you do, well, XDC winning some of these awards, and we're talking about all this interoperability with China and the FastNet and the whole thing of Quant. I mean, again, I think all these big systems talk to each other, okay? That's the point. So as I get further into this, I want to take you now over to here And basically, it's like this. Some of you guys are new. You may never have seen this before. But it's like people ask, Gilbert Verdian. You know, Gilbert Verdian, he more than wears a suit as implied here. A lot of experience in security in his previous roles. And by the way, remember how I mentioned HSBC earlier? Yeah, he had a role at HSBC before. So Verdian had this interview, and I want you guys to see it once again if you haven't seen this, because it talks about how he shared his insights on what they did with the RLN. RLN to RSN, connecting things. Regulated liability network to regulated settlement network. What would settle? Your Ripple XRPs for your institutional clients. What would settle with the retail? Your Stellar XLMs. What about your trade, your supply chain, your Zenfin XDCs? And when you go over to the Quant Network site, you literally see every single one of those, as far as the developer hub, I should say, listed there. We already shown you guys some of that, but maybe some of you guys haven't seen specifically this. This is 3 minutes. I know we're going a little bit the distance here, but it's well worth it. Listen to this, soak it in, and then we'll connect the last part and get Channing's take about the whole shebang. Here we go.
The RLN is a collaborative project by leading UK and global institutions to enable programmable payments with tokenized and non-tokenized bank deposits to create a venue for settlements for all forms of digital assets and all forms of money. So Quant brings its heritage and expertise in creating DLT-based financial infrastructure for all forms of tokenized digital assets and money to be interoperable. In the project, we're bringing a multitude of solutions and technology. This includes enhanced programmability, which is over and above what we've done before in CBDCs and fit for commercial banks, interoperability across networks and different types of DLTs, the interconnectivity of all of these, and then finally, all of this is orchestrated through our technology and presented through a banking-grade API. We're also partnering with R3 on the project, which are bringing in the shared ledger where all the tokenized assets will reside. So RLN means we're creating a new form of money with the commercial banks having a say of what this looks like. And this is all down to programmability. By having logic and programmability built into money itself, we're moving from electronic money to digital, and we're creating the foundation of digital finance. So the RLN project is starting with payments and settlements, but the goal and the vision is to create a common venue, a common platform for all forms of assets, all forms of instruments to settle with digital money. The RLN is a platform for innovation. It's being built and co-designed with all the commercial banks and institutions having a say. The whole vision of RLN is to create a new form of money for different types of instruments, different types of assets to be used across a shared venue. And the goal and the future vision is to make this into potentially a new FMI. And that means a regulated entity running all forms of money and assets on the platform.
I want you guys to keep that whole thing fresh in your mind of what Gilbert Verdian mentioned, and also the whole thing of what we share with you in regards to Standard Chartered and HSBC. Now, here's why. I'll pull up on the screen, and definitely I want to kick it over to Channing. All right, so you heard the brief gist. We've been there and done that with R3 and Quant. Awesome, right? Like, a lot of projects would love to boast that. But here's the key thing. If you go to quant.network, again, the whole thing of participants in the UK, especially with this whole thing with the RLN, definitely did include not just Barclays, not just Citi, but again, back to the HSBC. Because we know about Ripple and their connection. We also know about Quant. And back to the whole thing of some of these other ones. MasterCard, NatWest, Santander, Banco Santander. I mean, these are big institutional clients. Standard Chartered, just like you see right here. And then at the bottom, a lot of people don't even look at the bottom of this. Go to the very, very bottom. It's what's tagged. Here's why that's important. because you see here some key ones when it comes to this. So for one, you see Standard Chartered. You see programmable payments, by the way, tokenized deposits, tokenized money, UK finance, of course, Visa. It's all there. People will state that they're frustrated, Channing, with the whole thing of, quant, and like it doesn't do enough, it doesn't do enough for them. They just want to be like rich, like, maybe in a month or whatever the case be. But, when I was younger, I always hoped and dreamed that I would get involved with something that is going to be the next era of money. And I understand the whole thing with Ripple, don't get me wrong, real-time gross settlements, right? That's a major, major thing. But when you look into Quant, there are disclaimers on their site about how they're not even a cryptocurrency, So I'm looking at it from the perspective of, you're giving a full story of a programmable money, right? And it's how that programmable money connects to all these API layers everywhere, literally in the world. Now, we're going to give you some examples to solidify everything here in a bit about the world. And we're talking not just billions, guys, and trillions, but quadrillions. That'll be the final staple in this long outline. But we're so glad you stayed the course. And I talked to Channing earlier. I said to myself, my goodness, let's try to do our best to keep it a little bit more condensed. But you know what? It's something we do. We're passionate about this. We do these deep dives, and it is what it is. But I want to kick it over to Channing. I want to get your thoughts in regards to, obviously, some of these findings, sir.
Going back real fast to what you were saying when we were talking about the patents, especially the American patent in particular, it said networks. And if you know anything, you have the DLTs, which is distributed ledger technologies, and then you have DLNs, which is distributed ledger networks. This is why Quant says we are the network of networks. You have the RLN, which is a network. You have Visa, which has their network. You have MasterCard with their network, and HSBC with their network, and Citi with their network, and Bank of America with their network, and so forth and so on. They are the connector of all of the networks that will exist and do exist currently out there, because they are that interoperable patented technology that is tied to global standards, that is institutional grade technology, so that we can come together. Look, all those things I just said about overledger. Look at all those different key points I just said about overledger. That this technology is here and you can use it. This is the reason why when Visa did their announcement, MasterCard did their announcement, Standard Chartered, when you was just talking about, did their announcement, it's not one blockchain that they are talking about. They are talking about multiple blockchains. All of them are saying the same verbiage. It is not one blockchain. We have the technology to tap into multiple blockchains to do business. That's why MasterCard has stuff with Hedera. They have stuff with Stellar. They have stuff with XRP and XDC and whoever else, because Quant Network's technology, overledger, gives them that capability, and it's safe and secure because it is tied to global standards, and it is the institutional standard for building on blockchain. That first slogan before for digital finance, the foundation of digital finance. They are literally that API layer that allows any network's APIs to seamlessly integrate. So it's crazy that they're getting all these patents now active and actually up and moving as we're getting closer and closer and closer to this November deadline for the new data structure around payments globally goes live. All these things are not happening for just no reason. I'm gonna keep saying that. And for the people who are actually paying attention, yes, the QNT token price action, it compared to other projects suck. But go back 4 months ago and we're doing amazing because we were in the 50s. Now we're bouncing in between the high 90s to 100 teens. That's still a gain, you guys. Don't just look at the small wins as, oh, I'm not a millionaire yet, but look at the small wins as then it'll be another game, another game. And then as more and more processes and more networks pile on into their API integrated, think about what that's going to mean for that particular gateway. When you have all of this mass data being transmitted through it because they are the connector of connectors. Think about that. I don't trip off of 2025. My quant 2030, 2035, 2040. Like think like these patents stretch out for decades on purpose. It's like I don't want anyone to be able to come behind me and do this technology because this is something that is going to be vital and valuable. Give it another 20, 30 years, it may become open source. Who knows? And then at that point in time, what happens then? Because now you have an extreme amount of transactions flowing through overledger. But anyway, want to go to all of that? I kick it back to you, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, you bring up some valid points. Some people feel as though that, it's just QNT and of course ERC20, but they're not realizing that necessarily scale with just that in itself. So
Absolutely.
it's using other infrastructure like Ripple XRP to settle XDC. We've been there and done that. To wrap it up, I want to show you guys this. This is crazy stuff. This guy's name is Jeff Brown. He has great perspective here. Think about this. 2.1 quadrillion world IPO day. Now, in the past, I talked about the whole thing of, for example, global layer 1. I want you guys to just see this for a brief bit. So this guy, who's referred to as Jeff Brown, talks about this whole concept. He says that this world IPO day of $2.1 quadrillion will be unlocked with this thing called GTE technology. According to Jeff, there's a global shift to tokenizing everything from real estate, cars, to software and art that he says is creating the biggest wealth shift in human history. I'm going to get into examples in regards to, obviously, tokenization. But again, I want you guys to see the whole thing of where he's coming from when it comes to this. So he talks about this whole thing of, in the near future, you'll see World IPO Day. Well, what about the whole thing of having like a global layer 1 thing to make it stand out? It says new technology is ripping through the financial world. He calls it GTE. I look at it from the perspective of global layer 1. And again, I want you guys to understand that it's set to overhaul the entire world economy, bring 2.1 quadrillion private economy online. He talks about, put that into context, $2.1 quadrillion is equivalent to $21 trillion. Well, does he mention specifically anything about crypto? He says all global wealth and global debt, fiat money, commodities, crypto, and everything. And again, talking about that value, okay? So he goes into the whole thing of GTE stands for Global Token Exchange. He says, despite their name, doesn't appear to be an actual, global token exchange, but instead, this term he uses is the technology behind tokenization. And, when we think about like a Ripples or any of these ISO coins, that is what I am thinking about. I'm thinking about the whole key thing of, again, $2.1 quadrillion. Some people say there's not enough money in the world to get to these crazy market caps. Again, you just got to realize the bigger picture of things. So just want to give you guys that brief thing about that. There will be a video at the end of this outline that will talk about the global layer 1, a deep dive, deepest of deepest dives I've done a while back. But I thought I would share that with you guys because now you're starting to see more of this terminology pop up. Anyway, I know we went the distance. Do us a favor, do us a solid if you listen to the entire outline and simply type this into the comments, and that is GL1, as in global layer 1, and I'll let you think about what that means moving forward. Is it quant? Is it Ripple XRP? Is it the whole thing of the regulated liability network? Is Stellar part of the mix, or are they all part of the mix? So with that said, Channing, I know we went the distance, but have you got something you want to tell everybody?
I won't, not too long. Just you guys focus, know what you have, know what you hold, because literally, like my brother says, the research. His research is second to none. The deep dives that Maximus does is second to none. And pulling together this information about all of these entities globally, all seemingly now tapping into overledger, quant technology, API gateways. It's nothing to look over, and it's nothing to get shaken out of a bad day for price action in 2025 and then look back at 2027, 2028 and say, oh my God, I messed up. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be Bitcoin pizza man. Like, let's just be real. If you are paying attention to Quant Network in 2025, you are blessed, and your family one day will say, thank you so much for doing this, because it will be the difference between, in some cases, I believe, the have and have nots. Knowing about these technologies and investing in these ISO tokens will hopefully one day set all of us up to be very successful investors.
Well, I appreciate that. And nice to see your lovely macaw. So
yes, ISIS,
that's right. Anyway, we appreciate you guys. Know what you have, know why you hold it. As the saying goes, research trumps FUD 110%. We will see you on the next one. As we know, with XDC, a lot of us have to jump through the hoops of like KuCoin, use a VPN to kind of get around things. This is American-based exchange with Uphold. You don't have to do that. You can get your XDC here, and yeah, not having to deal with that is a great thing. You could also get XRP here. Again, American-based exchange. There's a refer and earn. Bottom line is, if you deposit $100, I get 20, you get 20. It's a win-win for both of us. And of course, that's in BTC, but again, you can swap that to any of these particular altcoins. So check it out. Links are in the description if you would like to take advantage of the 20. And yeah, a win for both of us. How cool is that? Links in the description, both on the live and on the recorded. Thanks, guys. Over and out.